And so they fight, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Everything turns out for the best.
Well, Tasha kills her, so she wins.
Yes,
but they beam both of them back to the Enterprise in time to revive the wife. And so because she has died, her bond of marriage...
she has died.
Right. So Luton loses everything at the end, and his buddy... She marries his buddy.
Because, he actually loved her.
Right, he called out for her.
Because he was like, watch out! Watch out for that white girl!
See, you shout. You show a little concern.
Yeah.
Who knows what awesome things might happen to you.
And also, I use that voice because they're...
Black.
They
are characters from Eddie Murphy's Home Country in Coming to America.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, even when Tasha Yar is fighting the wife.
Yeah, let me look up her name here.
She's wearing this tiger stripe suit, she's like a jungle woman.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, it's like a neon pink tiger with a headband.
So, is it racist?
Urena, that's her name. Urena. I told you my thoughts on it. I feel like in the execution, it's racist. I don't think there's anything in the writing that's explicitly racist. It's not like Paradise Syndrome where it's written about the white god taking care of the Indians. I think the fact that they cast it all black, and they decided to play the characters as primitive, semi-primitive, like Prince of Persia era.
Well, yeah, I mean, not like primitive, where they're using rocks to make fire and stuff, but just kind of like a very traditional,
like background characters in an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, I mean,
Second World, maybe.
I don't like the word primitive.
No, it's not. They're not primitive because they have their own technology.
They have a vaccine for this disease that Starfleet even doesn't have.
They're just not as advanced in a lot of ways.
Well,
culturally, they're not.
I guess culturally, they're still. I mean, it's more. It's like a throwback. It's like a throwback culture.
Well, I even say you're a lot like one of our primitive. Not primitive. One of you were very much like an earlier version of an Earth culture. I don't know if they ever come right out and say which culture it is, but when they're doing the giving of gifts, I don't think they're actually. I don't think they name a country in Africa though. I think they pick something else entirely. So I feel like the execution is racist. I don't feel like the story itself, because they were originally written to be aliens, and they were like, "Oh, we can't afford to make aliens. Let's just make them black. We can afford black people.
We can afford black people." James Hunt of denofgeek.com said that it's quite possibly the worst piece of Star Trek ever made.
I don't think he's seen all of the original show.
Yeah, maybe he hasn't seen Paradise Syndrome.
Yeah.
See,
that's such hyperbole.
So if they weren't black,
it wouldn't be racist.
No one would even think. I mean, if they're just
if they were multiracial, if there were blacks and whites, Hispanics, if they were Earth, where there are lots of different.
And that's just there's all members of this culture.
Mm-hmm.
Then it would be they're just it's
right. It's just a different culture.
They just look like a street gang from the Warriors. Right on.
But the way they dress them and the way they make them speak is, I think, pretty racist.
And so
maybe unintentionally so. I think that honestly, the producers I want to see beauty in everything. So what I would like to assume is that the showrunners were just pulling on a trope. The same way that Star Trek uses a lot, they use the submarine movie trope in Balance of Terror. This is the I know you don't like the word, but the primitive society with the outdated ritual that our characters somehow have to work around or work their way through. It gives them a puzzle to solve. And Picard is very Kirk-like in this episode in his trickery and everything. It's very much like Kirk would have handled it. Although they never would have let a woman fight another woman, I don't think, on the show. It would have been one of the main three doing the fighting.
I think, though, with the reputation that Star Trek had as being this progressive show, and even at this point, you've got a Klingon as a member of the Enterprise crew,
right,
before Undiscovered Countries come out, and it's revealed that they're homies now. Or not homies, but there's a truce.
There's a truce so much so that Klingons are now serving in Starfleet. Yeah. Which is a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's not even addressed. They just show
it. Yeah, they're there's a Klingon, and you just have to assume, something must
wonderful
have
happened.
Something like like there must be some kind of peace for a show that progressive to
have an episode like this.
I mean, not even. I'll outshine you and be like, let's say that the producers are like, oh, like that's you guys think that's racist? No way! Like, wow! Like, let's assume that they had no clue that it would be construed as racist. They should have seen that coming, though. They should have been like, oh, should we do this? Because I mean, we could see how some people like this is just like you just like wrote up this story and be like, oh, let's base it on this culture from from Africa or whatever.
Right.
Let's base it on that and be like, oh well, like it might seem kind of racist if we do that.
But if we cast it multiracial,
like, what about maybe we should change it up? I think they should have had more forethought.
They should have. They definitely should have. And it was still an intensely watchable episode for such a racist thing. I still had a lot of fun watching. Well, there were things I liked about it. Like I loved we get to see more of the holodeck. We actually get to see the Dreamatorium lines on the wall.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the fact that Tasha puts on a karate robe that serves no purpose.
It's called a gi.
All right, she puts on a gi.
Whatever, dude.
Whatever. Loser. Karate geek.
Karate loser. Also, the fact that she's like computer, Aikido 1. And I'm like, what she does is like, that's not Aikido. That's judo.
See, I
at the
expensive sounded like a karate nerd.
Well, I mean, like I'm not completely, I'm not. I've never.
You're not an expert.
I've never. I
haven't studied with any of the great masters.
I want to say it's more judo than Aikido. Then again, maybe it is Aikido.
Maybe it's one of those things like the word gentleman used to mean something different 200 years ago. It actually meant that you were, I think, I could be wrong about this, but I think it used to mean that you had titled lands, like you were a landowner. That's what gentleman actually meant. That's who the gentry were, I think. So, but now it just means a guy who's polite and mannered. Yeah. So maybe Aikido in 300 years means something different than it does now. Maybe I don't know. I think it's a mistake on the show's part. It sounds like World War III is going on.
What's going on?
I hope that my neighbors are a tempestuous group, to put it kindly, to use my gentlemanly manner.
Sean once told me a story. There's two little ones living there.
Yes,
2 boys.
Yeah, very small.
Maybe 8 and 5. 8 and 4, 7 and 4.
The little one's probably closer to 4 or 3, and the older one's 7 or 8. Probably.
So the younger one had locked the older one out of the apartment.
Yes.
And so he's banging on the door, let me in, and unlock the door. And the little one says,
"I forgot how."
No, he said I locked it on.
I locked it on accident. That's right. It was an accident.
And then the older one says, "Well, you better fucking unlock it on accident."
I was just saying, oh my god, if my parents had heard me talking that way. I'm not saying I never did, but I'm saying that if my parents had heard me, or if a neighbor back when I was that age had heard me, they probably would have said something to my parents.
Whatever happened to that? Now everyone just plays it close to the vest and doesn't get involved in other people's affairs.
Well, I think there's a lot more litigation surrounding interfering with other people's children than there used to be.
Not you can just say something and be like, "Hey, don't talk like that."
Well, you also standards of parenting, I think, are radically different than they used to be. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. There used to be more of a standard, little kids shouldn't curse, and now parents are no, man, let them figure it out on their own. They're just words.
Well, I think we also live in a culture of entitlement where a lot of parents are my kid can do nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Rather than you are a sinner who needs to get right with God, and all these adults are here to help you. There's also a suspicion of any adult dealing with a child who's not that child's parent or relative.
What's your end game?
Yeah. And people have a problem with don't tell my kid what to do.
Yeah, I mean,
so
here's my jam. She turns 3 next month, and she's awesome. I hung out with her this morning.
She is pretty great.
She is so awesome. If she does something, if she does something she isn't supposed to do, and I'm not there, and you're hey, if she repeats a curse word or something,
she says, "I'm gonna make you cum blood."
I'm gonna make you blood cum.
I'm gonna kick you in the nuts so hard you're gonna bleed cum.
But no, she's like, let's say she's like, shit, and you say, like, hey, don't say that.
Right.
I'd be like, oh, that's what I would tell her.
Right.
Go ahead. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if some adult is telling my kid what to do, if they're telling them the same thing I would tell them what to do, like, I have no problem with that.
Well, I think, I've got friends and a wife who is a teacher right now. We're trying to be a teacher. She just finished her student teaching. And you see that a lot as a teacher with, like, the parents coming in. And it's a really weird line to draw because, like, you're expected to be kind of a stand-in parent all day long. Yeah. But there are certain lines you can't cross. So it sort of makes it hard to know where the line is, depending on where the school is and how the parent reacts. Like, I don't know. I think a lot of parents... It's sort of like when the episode of The Simpsons where George Bush spanks Bart.
Yeah.
And Homer loses his goddamn mind.
Yeah.
But like, I think that's a pretty exemplary of bad parenting. I'm sure there are still plenty of great parents in the world, but I don't know. Or maybe we're just more aware of it because we're older? Like, or do you remember parents interfering more when you were a kid? Like, parents that weren't yours saying things to you like, hey, don't do that, don't say that. I'm going to tell your parents, or they would actually call your parents.
Yeah, no, well, I remember one time I got in huge trouble in junior high for skipping school. Like, we walked from school back to my friend's house, and actually we got there, and his older brother and his girlfriend had also skipped school that day, so, like, all four of us just hung out and, like, watched Labyrinth and, like, ate pizza, and it was dope.
That's what you do.
Yeah, and then at some point, my friend was like, hey, let's go to the park. And I was like, I don't want to leave, dude. Like, we're not supposed to be out.
That's a bad idea.
And he's like, no, it's cool. Well, our friend's mom, like, we all lived in the same complex. Our mutual friend's mom saw us and knocked us out. And we got in trouble. And, like, now it's like, would parents really do that? Like, is that still a thing?
I don't know. Parents, write in and let us know. I don't know how many of our listeners are actually parents. We lost Julie Abel, I know, who is a parent. She would probably tell us. I think she would call. She's a very conscientious parent, my friend Julie. I don't know. I don't have any kids, and this is part of why I don't want to have kids, because I don't want to have to deal with other people's kids. As my kids' friends, as just existing, like, I mean, Becca and I are trying to move out of this complex this summer, and a big part of why is those little assholes across the hall. Like, most kids aren't like your kids, or your kid. Yeah. Or I hope my nephew grows up to be a well-behaved. Right now he's great, but he doesn't really talk, so I don't know what he's actually like. And I assume my sister will be an okay disciplinarian. I'm praying. And,
like, that's the thing. Like, when my kid starts to throw a fit, we're like, no, this isn't going to happen. Like, right. We're not going to do this. And I'll, like, the whole, like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, what do you do if does she ever start screaming in public? Well, like at Freebirds, but that was a year ago, right?
Well, I mean,
if she starts throwing a temper tantrum.
Well, it's getting to the point now where she, like, you can talk to her and she can,
calm down.
You can be like, hey, like, this isn't, like, when they're like 1 or 2 years old, like
they're pretty much a terrorist who has you hostage.
Yeah, they're like, I don't want to be here. I don't know how to verbalize that or let anyone else know except to, wail like a banshee.
Right. So, until you figure out by process of elimination
like, okay,
what's going to make me happy.
We have to leave.
Right.
But now it's, I mean, she, like, I can be like, hey, this, like, we're not going to do this. And I don't want to be, like, it's, You
don't want to be like, I'm going to spank your butt so hard.
I'm going to beat you. No.
That was the threat I had.
I don't want to, it's like that very waspy type of, like, now Jeremy.
We agreed.
Like, we agreed that that if you were quiet, that mommy would buy you a new toy. Like, that whole, like, like, negotiating, like...
You don't negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah. And so... But at the same time, like, I don't want to... Like, I'm still the parent, she's still the kid. There's a power balance that is definitely...
Has to be struck.
That's at play there.
Right.
I don't want to abuse it where I'm like, I definitely want to...
You don't want your kid to be terrified of you, but you want her to respect your authority.
Exactly, and be like, look, kiddo, like, this, like, we can't do this, this is not a good look. I mean, like, and that's kind of, that's my whole, that's my end game.
Right.
With raising my daughter, is that that I'll be able to be like, hey,